This talk is sponsored by Livepeer. Livepeer is a decentralized video streaming network that provides the necessary infrastructure for broadcasting video over the internet at a fraction of the cost to today's cloud infrastructure. Learn more at livepeer.org.
So, what's up, everybody? I'm Orlundo Hubbard. This is how I built this, my Snappy Piranhas collection. As you can see at the bottom, it's an experimental project. So I didn't understand the entire NFT process from start to finish. I wanted to know it, and I wanted to be able to do it. So, as a tinkerer slash engineer slash, just builder, whatever, what better way to figure out a process than to get your hands dirty and dive right into it. So that's what I did. It honestly took me about maybe a month or so to get it out. I launched it on Polygon, but let's go ahead and jump right into it. And just a disclaimer, I'm not going to go over like every single piece of code, every single line of code, just for the sake of time. I'm just going to cover just like some really high level concepts just to for you to get a gist of what actually went into creating this project. So first things first, let me introduce myself. Who am I? I am Orlundo Hubbard. I am a Web3 engineer. I have been in this space for about 5 months now. I joined the developer DAO in October, and it kind of just skyrocketed my knowledge of Web3 as well as my knowledge as a developer. I've been developing for about a year now, so still pretty fresh, still pretty new, still with a humble mindset of just, hey, I want to learn. I want to learn as much as possible. I live in Austin, Texas with my wife and 2 daughters. My lovely wife, she's everything to me. And then my daughter, I have a 9-month-old and a 9-year-old. And I'm on a mission, man, to just build NFTs that actually change the world. So that's very important to me. I really believe in the NFT space. I know there's a lot of especially right now, it's a lot of scamming and rug pulling and all these type of things going on. But I think that, we are on the cusp of this huge shift to where NFTs will play a huge part in actually how we interact on the internet and how we interact in society. I think at some point, somebody's going to come along with the real use case for NFTs. Right now, it's just profile pictures. We all know those type of things, but I think there's going to be something that comes along that we're going to say, okay, that was the real reason NFTs are, that's the real utility of NFTs. And I just want to be a part of that, just tinkering and figuring out that process and actually getting there. So here's what we'll discuss. We're going to discuss 3 things: the origin of the project, some key concepts, and we're going to talk about a little bit of inspiration, because everybody wants to be inspired. Everybody loves to be inspired, of course. So let's talk about the origin of the project first. So what happened was, again, like I said at the beginning, I didn't understand the entire process of NFTs from start to finish. So I wanted to learn. I wanted to really know how this works. It was a few things about it that just weren't clicking with me. There was a few gaps in the process that just did not click with me. So I decided to just kind of dive headfirst into it. So what happened was, I was doing some art with my daughter. We homeschool her, the 9-year-old. And one of her art projects was just drawing we were just finding something to draw. We found something on Google and we kind of just drew it. It was just like a picture of a piranha. And, I just was wanting to have some art. I needed some art for my NFT project. So I was like, man, this will be fine. This will work, for just to start with. As you can see, the picture here, here's my daughter. She's 9 years old. There's the picture. There's her picture. My original picture, I can't find it. I don't know where it is, but that's the one that I used to do the layers. So 3 key concepts. And sorry if this pink is kind of hard on the eyes. I just kind of tried to keep it colorful, but we're going to cover layers, we're going to cover the code, and we're going to cover deployment. So those 3 key concepts are pretty, for me, those were the things that stood out to me as far as me building this project. The first thing is layers. So you see right here, layers are simply just unique images stacked on top of one another to make a collection complete. So as you can see with this GIF, it's me just going through the layers that I did on Adobe Photoshop. I will say that there was not a lot of that. This is the crux of why I was getting blocked of understanding NFTs, because I was like, man, how do they get these layers to from the wherever they are to the code. Like what happens? What does that process look like? There weren't a lot of videos that kind of like meshed everything together, so I still had to kind of stitch things together. For this portion, I checked out Cool Cat, the artist of Cool Cat. He has a YouTube video actually that shows him in the process of creating his layers. So I just kind of followed along with that. I hopped into, because I have Adobe, I hopped into like Adobe Photoshop. This is what that is right here. And honestly, yeah, I just started building out the layers, and I kind of just like took the pencil tool and drew it and started building out the layers, and yeah, I got what I needed. And then we're gonna talk about let's go ahead to the code. Talk about importing layers. So what you want to do once you get all your layers, you put them in the folder. You want to export them. You want to export them from Adobe and then keep them in their own separate folders. As you can see, kind of like right here, like the back fin, the different layers for the back fin, the different layers for the background, body, bottom fin, so on and so forth. Once you take those files, you want to make sure you keep them in order, of course. You got to import them into your code editor. So whatever code editor that you use, whether it be VS Code, there's different code editors. I know everybody works with something different, but I like VS Code. It's pretty popular. So you're going to need to put those in there in order to actually to generate the unique traits. So let's talk about configurations to the code. So I used Hashlips, his repo. He has a repo. He has a very good repo actually that you could just kind of fork. And honestly, I just made a few changes to it that put me in position to actually be able to deploy this thing onto the Polygon network. I pretty much followed his tutorial and just kind of went through the whole thing from start to finish. But yeah, he has a really good tutorial on how to actually go through the entire process. So first thing that I went through was just configuring things. So making sure the network configurations were set to the network that I wanted to use, which is ETH. So ETH is, of course, it's a layer 1, but it's not the I didn't deploy on a layer 1 because it's pretty expensive. Of course, you don't want to just like deploy mainnet to ETH, like, and it's a recreational project. So what I decided to do was go to Polygon. So I went on the Polygon network, which is the network still has to be set to ETH for myself because Polygon is just a layer 2 on top of ETH. And then next you have the layer configurations, which is basically where you tell it. So you see right here where it says grow addition of size. This is the addition, the size of the addition that I want. So you can set this to however many you want. I only set it to 1,000. I know a lot of people use like the 10,000, the 10K, generative art collection, but I never really liked the 10K because I was like, man, that's a lot. Like it's a huge amount. And I think it's more special when you have something, a little bit less, like 1,000 or like 500 or 2,000 or whatever the case may be. So I wanted to just kind of stick with 1,000 and then so that's what I did. So next is you want to have the layers order, and this is an array, so you want to make sure that they go in the right order that they need to be in. So the back fin is first, the background, the body, the bottom fin, and then so on and so forth. You want to make sure you have those in the correct order. Now let's talk about the contract. So again, this was forked from Hashlips. He has a NFT contract that you can find on GitHub. You can fork it. And honestly, I pointed out this piece of code here because that was the modifications that I made the most in this portion of the contract. So the string, which is the base, is a base URI. The public base extension, which is a .json. So the base extension is basically how the smart contract knows what file to actually pull from. So when I put you see right here as a string .json, now the smart contract knows, okay, find this .json file and pull it, pull the data from there. So the next is the cost. I I didn't charge anybody for this because I didn't want to, because I knew it was recreational, which is why it says 0.00 Ether. Of course, you can put it to however much Ether you want. But for me, I just said, no, I'm not going to charge anybody. So that's why you see the 0.00 Ether. And just that honestly depends on the where you're deploying to. So since I was deploying on Polygon, that would probably, like, if I were to charge someone, that would have to be converted into Way, actually, because Ether, when you're doing Ether, it's not just when you're doing on like a Polygon or something like that, it's not just normal Ether. So it's a lot less expensive, of course. So you have to convert it into Way and then get the Way amount from there. Next is max supply. So of course, like I said before, I only wanted to do 1,000. So the max supply on this is 1,000, and once it hits 1,000, the contract knows to say like, okay, it's sold out. The max mint amount is only 3, simply because you don't want people aping on your project. So I only set it to 3. You can only mint 3 at a time. Moving right along, we're gonna go to. So this portion of the contract, I didn't have to use, but I just wanted to point it out because it's a huge function. Even just like going through that tutorial, he was like, one thing that Hatchlips pointed out as well was that, hey, you want to make sure that you have this function. If you're going to charge, you want to make sure that you have this function it's a super important function in your Solidity contract, because it allows you to actually withdraw the money that you receive, the profits or the proceeds that you receive from your NFT collection. So without this function, the contract won't know that, hey, you can actually pull the funds from your wallet. So if you're making an NFT collection or anything like that, just make sure this is an important function. Make sure that you have this in your contract for sure. So let's talk about the front end. It's a pretty simple front end. Pretty basic front end. I didn't want to do too much. Again, it's just something for me to get an understanding of. So first stop here is the global CSS. So, CSS is one of those things where it's like, don't let people, if you're good at CSS, don't let people look down upon you because you focus on CSS or CSS. CSS is very hard. And I don't want to go into too much of a tangent about that, but one thing I see a lot is like people kind of looking down on just people who consider like CSS huge or whatever. But most of the time, people can't. If you were to take a dev that maybe use whatever framework or whatever, Material, Tailwind, whatever the case may be. I'm not gonna say all of them, but a lot of devs, they really have a hard time with CSS because it's an interesting thing. It honestly is an interesting thing, and I wanted to point this out because this global CSS right here is Hatchlips had in his front end portion of it, he had global CSS set. So one thing that I was running into was I was doing a lot of like inline CSS. So in the App.js, I was doing a lot of inline CSS, which was clashing with the global CSS. Thus, it was not allowing me to maneuver things the way that I wanted to. So I was running into that issue a lot, and I didn't know what was happening. But once I kind of figured it out, I noticed that the global CSS was overriding the inline CSS that I was trying to write in the app.js. And then what I had to do was like rip the entire like global CSS out and start from scratch, which this is all that I did because this is kind of all that I needed. I just wanted, I was going to do the CSS in the app.js. So I just kind of needed to get that, this blocker out of my way in order to get it. So that kind of really like, I point this out because that kind of really kind of stopped me for a little bit because it was just like weird. It was weird, and I had to really figure out how to get that done. Next, we're going to talk about the app.js portion. So I point this out is because a lot of times coming from Web 2, from a front end position to Web 3, it's not too much of a huge jump because there's really the only thing that you really that's different is this portion right here. So I point this connect button out, and Hashlips is his repo used a lot of like Redux and things like that. So all of the functionality is in here for the connect button. But what I think a lot of developers don't understand, especially front end developers coming from the Web 2 space, when you come into the Web 3 space, really what you really need to focus on is just like this connect button and talking to providers and things like that. That's really the bulk of Web 3. So you're not going to run into too much differently like you would, say, on the back end, which if you were at first just dealing with like Node.js, now you have to deal with Solidity as well, and focusing on smart contracts and things like that. So I wanted to just go over that piece of code. Again, I'm not going to go into every single line of code because I don't want to bore anybody, and nobody wants to just like read code, just sit and read code. So I just want to point out the things that stood out to me. So let's talk about deployment. So we'll go over the CID. So the CID is basically what you're going to need to point the contract to the correct metadata. So this long hash right here is how the contract is going to know where the pictures are and what they look like. So you cannot store photos and pictures like that on the blockchain by just strictly on the blockchain. You can't just write it in the code and then say, okay, go to the blockchain. No, you need somewhere to store that data, somewhere to store that metadata. And there are a few different platforms out there. I personally use Pinata and, of course, like IPFS. So you need somewhere to actually store the metadata. You can't just take a JPEG, put it on the blockchain. It does not work like that. It works by metadata and these hashes right here, the CID. What happens is you take that CID and then you put it in the base URI. So that base URI that you saw at the beginning in the contract, this is it, the base URI. Once you paste this link in there, it lets the contract know where to actually find all of the metadata that was stored on IPFS. So you want to go here. You want to do IPFS :/ and then paste in the CID. Now I use Remix for my. So Remix is really good if it's an in-browser code editor. Remix is really good if you want to just be able to play around with your functions and call the functions. I use Remix to deploy the contract and do things like that. So you see this here. This is all Remix. If you wanted to do it out of your code, your own personal code editor, you would have to write a few scripts to do for deployment and things like that. But Remix pretty much already has it for you. So if you want an easier way, of course, go through Remix. And then this right here, it's just like a GIF, just showing you like what you would actually need to use. So by default, when you first use Remix, it's on like JavaScript VM, which is it's not really like for deploying straight to mainnet. So you have to go make sure the environment is on injected Web3. Like right here, and you could of course pick a custom network, which I chose a custom network with Polygon. It's gonna find your account, and then you want to come down here. Once you deploy, you want to come down here and make sure that you fill out these important function names right here, the name, the symbol, and then the initial base URI, which is where the IPFS the link goes. And then what you want to do from there is click transact, and then once it transacts and it gives you your block hash, what you want to do is you want to copy this right here. I know it's probably hard to see, but you want to copy this. That's going to give you the contract ABI. So the ABI is very important when you want to connect, allow your front end to talk to the minting process, basically. So it's how your front end is going to talk to the minting process and tell the minting process, like, hey, you need this is what this process looks like. This is the data that you need in order for when somebody goes to press mint, it actually mints them their NFT. So that's very important, very, very important. The contract ABI is huge. And then yeah, what's gonna happen is once you transact, it's gonna give you a block hash that looks like this. So this is basically your very own block in the blockchain. Like this is your very own block right here on the blockchain. So you could take that and then go to somewhere like Polyscan, or if you're deploying on L1 Ethereum, you could go to something like Etherscan and plug in your contract address, and it'll find your collection. For me, I can just I can just type in Snappy Piranhas and it'll pull up. That pretty much is it for that piece. And then yeah, that's it. That's pretty much a full NFT collection shipped. Again, like I said, from there you just would find your collection via the deployment address. And if you go to the site, if you're just going to mint from like this, just say you go to snappypiranhas.io, which is the collection website, and you mint from there. You can just go, of course, to OpenSea, and you can see it in your wallet. And it will. That's pretty much that process. So that's it in a nutshell. I know that was very, very fast, but like I said, again, it's a time limited thing. So I want to make sure that I'm being respectful of time and being respectful of everybody's time. But what's next for me? So what's next for Orlundo? So this project here was basically just me understanding the process and actually just doing something recreational so I can get a gist of what it actually looked like to take a NFT collection from start to finish. I think, again, I want to just restate how I really believe that, the NFT spaces can really shift the way we interact on the internet, and for the better, for good, but right now we're just working out a few kinks in the space. It's so new. Everything is so new. So we're all just learning. But for my next collection, I think I want to do something more charitable. So, maybe do an NFT collection, and then what I'm thinking is 100% of the proceeds go to St. Jude's Children's Hospital. It's one of those things where it's just a blessing just to be a blessing. Those kids and those families who have children in the St. Jude Hospital. I think it'll be phenomenal to just be able to bless them in that way. I'm originally from Memphis, so I think what better way to give back to my city than to give to these children. And I have two daughters, so you see these things, and it's like, man, it could happen to anybody, but that's one of the things that I have next on the agenda. Also, NFTeach. It's kind of like in the D school / I guess D education space or industry. Of course, education is something that still has a lot of kinks in it, and that it's kind of been one of those broken processes for a very, very long time. And I think that it can be fixed. So I got with a few DevDAO buddies, and that's something that we're working on. And then just continue to build. I'm what I've learned from this entire process. Just like, man, I really like building things. Like I just like breaking it, fixing it, and then going from there. So yeah, that's what's next for me. And then just a little bit of inspiration. Pour your heart into it. Give it everything you got. Give it 100%. Every single build, every single conversation, every single thing that you have. I want to make sure that whatever I'm doing, I'm giving 110%. I put my heart into everything that I'm doing. And I think that I think that's a huge piece. I've been studying lately, just like founders and just listening to their stories and reading about their stories. One thing that I see a lot in them, and just kind of like a trending thing, is just the fact that they are really they have just like this dogged determination, like that nobody is literally going to stop them. And I think that is so huge, just having that perseverance of, nobody's gonna stop me, and I don't care who's in my way. I'm gonna get to where I'm gonna go. I think that I think that that's something that can't be taught. I think that hunger and that deep desire to prevail despite the obstacles is just something that can't be taught. And it starts with just pouring your heart into whatever. This space is so open, and this space is so wide open for just new ideas and new opportunities. But it's going to take every one of us pouring our hearts 110% into it, and building things that are for, one thing that we talk about in the DevDAO is public goods, building things for the public that are good. That's literally what our focus should be. And in that focus and in that effort, it should be 110%. And having that dogged determination. I literally approach everything with the mindset, when I'm after something, it's nobody's going to stop me from getting it. I don't care who you are. You will not stop me. And I think that if I could give anything and just inspire anybody at this in this conference, it's just to continue to go after this space with just dogged determination, and really build things that are gonna change the internet forever. But yeah, that's pretty much it for me. So where can you find me? You can follow me on Twitter at Orlundo H. Follow me on GitHub at Orlundo Hubbard. I do want to give some special shout outs and special thanks to the DevDAO for putting this conference together. NARB. I'm blanking right now. Will. Just thank everybody that has been a part of just this process. Rahat, for actually putting this thing together. Thank you to all the sponsors. Just thank you to everybody out there. And I'm really excited about growing in this space with everybody. What I've noticed is that this space is very small. It's a small community, tight-knit community. Everybody kind of knows each other, and I'm excited to just continue to build and learn with everybody, and to grow with everybody. So I love y'all. Peace out.